Glasgow will be kicking themselves after failing to perform in their first European final. When it's Mark, let's talk rugby. We have a bit of a cagey start to this one. Toulon have a lot of the ball. Glasgow showing that there are opportunities for them with ball in hand. That they seem to be looking to get the ball out wide and attack the space out there. But Toulon, dealing with them fairly well and holding onto the ball for about the first 5 minutes. Then we get a moment of magic from Saran. Toulon, they're on the attack on the edge of 22. Saran then kind of fakes as if he's going to spread the ball out wide to the left, puts a little grubber in behind the defence, runs in himself, gathers that, and then has the pace to get over the line. Looks like Smith might have maybe got an arm under the ball and possibly held him up, but Wayne Barnes is on the spot. He says he's happy with the grounding, so don't have any TMO check for that. And then Saran converts his own try. We're at 7-0. Toulouse then lose Dan Bigger. He has to go off for an HIA, which he fails. He went off actually before the try was scored, I think. He was replaced by Isaiah West. Glasgow feel like they need to respond and not let Finelson get away from you so quickly. So feel like they've got to get a response. There are as I said earlier, signs that they're getting some joy when they're attacking out in the wider channels, but shortly after the game restarts, Dupree's he gets pinged for offside. Saran decides to kick for the post. It's about 40 meters out, but as soon as he's kicked it never looks like it's on target, and it drifts to the right and wide. Toulon, though, then they win a penalty at a scrum. They really had the advantage in the scrum for most of the game. And it felt like at that stage there's not much going Glasgow's way. Their line out at that stage was pretty competitive, though. But that's pretty much the only thing that was going for them. Toulon then, from the penalty, managed to work themselves back into the Glasgow 22. And then we have, it's looking like if they get another try, it's going to be very ominous for Glasgow because they're just soaking up so much pressure from Toulon. Cummings, though, managed to dive on a loose ball, as it looks like Toulon may actually convert again and Glasgow are able to clear. But then the line out that was going well for Glasgow starts kind of having a few hiccups. They have a line out 10 meters from their own line. They overthrow it, and Babigny gets to the ball first. They recycle it. Parise then takes advantage of Tuipulotu shooting out of the line. He goes over under the post. It's converted by Saran, and we're at 14-0 to Toulon. And in a final, 14-0 is a very big lead. We very rarely see teams coming back from big margins in finals the way we would maybe in a normal kind of league game or like a pool or even a quarterfinal or a semi-final. Glasgow, they do then have their first genuine chance of the game. They managed to get out to that edge. Canzonieri then kicks the ball in behind. I think it's Horn maybe who gets the ball first, and he kicks on under pressure, but then Villiers is able to get to the ball first, and he dots down over his own line, but it was kicked through, so it's a drop out to Toulon. Glasgow then, again, the overthrow at the line out, and it leads to another try. Olivon claims it at the end of the line out, and he breaks forward to just about the edge of the 22. They put it through the hands, and then Selebu, he goes through a gap. He gets hauled down just short of the line, but then Saran, he managed to snipe and gets over for his second try of the game. He then converts that as 21-0, and it's feeling like at that stage it's going to be a game for the ages if Glasgow do manage a comeback from here. Glasgow do start kind of getting some kind of foothold in the game. They have a concerted period of possession and pressure. They win a penalty in the 22. They kick it to the corner. They're beginning to look dangerous with ball in hand. They're about 10 metres out for the line, but then Dupreez spills the ball forward in the tackle. And, you're feeling like they need to take their chances. Like we've seen them all season being able to, convert, but especially second half of the season, being able to convert their chances, but they're just not doing it. And in a final, you don't get too many chances, and if you don't take them, you're not gonna, for the most part at least, you're not gonna come away with any silverware. At this stage now, they're camped in the Toulon half. They win another penalty, kick that to the corner. They manage to retain the line out this time. They go with one out runners close to the line, but then Xander Fagerson knocks on a metre short as he picked up from the ruck. It looked like one of his own players was kind of on the ground trying to just kind of place the ball as he picked it up, and the two of them kind of got their arms tangled and results in the knock-on. Then Wynakolo tries to break after the scrum for Toulon, but then as he passes inside, Parise can't control the pass and knocks it on under pressure for Horn. So another great chance for Glasgow. They attack off the back of the scrum. Tuipulotu then looks to try and put Jones through a hole on a short ball, but Jones just can't hold the pass. It goes forward. Glasgow, though, then win the penalty at the scrum. I'm thinking like they've got to take one of these chances at this stage. They decide to opt for the scrum. It's about 15 metres out, centre of the field, great attacking position for them. They try to go off the back of that, but it comes to nothing. They put a little kick in behind, and it's easy for Toulon to cover. Halftime score is 21-0 to Toulon. Saran injured himself, though, tackling Horn in that last play, and he doesn't come back out for the second half. They also lose Paya'au and Villiers at halftime, and then Bastero, Payo, and Cinzelli all come on for them at halftime. So big disruption for them, but you wouldn't think it the way they're playing. Like you would think that Glasgow are the ones who are losing all these important players to injury. Into the second half, then Glasgow win a penalty early on. They kick it to the corner. Line-out malfunctions again, but they do manage to retain the ball and they win another penalty. But their line-out ball just hasn't been clean for them. They're winning most of it, but it's not really a platform that they can properly attack from. They then have advantage. They try a cross kick, but Colby is able to claim that. You come back for the penalty. They then kick to the corner again. Toulon managed to force a knock-on, and then they win a penalty at the scrum, and they are able to clear. Glasgow, normally so clinical, struggling to convert to any of their opportunities at all, and it really is costing them in the game. They then decide to change their entire front row because, they're conceding penalties at the scrum, and they're trying to kind of, with Wayne Barnes trying to give the impression that, well, we changed the whole front row. So whether if the starters were the problem, maybe things are going to go away now. They then get a great attacking chance, but they're basically like they're in the 22. They're maybe about 15 meters out. It's a move across the line. They have space on the outside, and they have a chance as well to kind of pin the defense and use kind of an overlap out wide. But what happens is that Smith and Cancellieri kind of have cross wires, ends up with Cancellieri knocking on under pressure from Colby. Basically, like, Cancellieri just needed to maintain his width, I think, and then either Smith goes through the gap or he gives it to Cancellieri, and then he has a one-on-one to try and get into the corner. I think he probably would score that, but he doesn't. He comes back inside instead, takes the space from Smith, and Colby is there in between the two of them, and it's pretty easy for him to force that knock on. In the end, Colby then kicks a beauty of a 50-22, and he gives Toulon what at that stage was a rare foray in the second half into Glasgow territory. Toulon then win a penalty at the breakdown, and Piog strokes that over for 24-0. And thinking at that stage, like, 24 points is a lot to come back from in a final. Glasgow then almost throw the game completely away, decide to take a quick 5-meter line out. They overthrow it, and Oliwan catches it, goes over and dots it down. But then Timo check shows that the line out had already formed, and therefore Oliwan was actually offside. It's no try and a let off for Glasgow. So something going their way, but they just cannot take advantage of the breaks that they're getting. They had some bad luck, but even the good luck, they just can't do anything with it. They do, though, finally get themselves on the ball. It's a strike from a line out on the edge of the 22. They set up a fake maul, and then they sweep back on the blind side. They set up a 3-on-2 on the left. Price releases Stain. He steps to cover and goes over to score. It's converted for 24-7. At this point, I'm thinking, okay, Glasgow, you've finally woken up. Maybe the comeback is on. But Toulon restore, not quite the full margin, but pretty much most of the margin almost immediately. They're on attack. Colby finds Vainakolu on the switch, and then he steps through a number of Glasgow would-be tacklers and gets to the line, stretches out to score, conversion is missed, and we're at 29-7. Then Toulon start taking the reins again. They have a period of sustained pressure in the Glasgow 22. Who's it? Buidravu Walu. He finds a gap and he manages to stretch out to score. This one is converted at 36-7, and right now it's game over. There's no way back for Glasgow from here, even if they were playing at some of the scintillating rugby that we saw them earlier on in the season. There's just not enough time left for them, and the margin is just too big. Then we have some poor play from Glasgow actually leads to a try for them. So they, first of all, they have, they kick a penalty into the corner, and they set up a maul, and Toulon are just controlling the maul, and they're just inching them into touch. And by the time they realize it and try and get the ball out, they've been driven into touch. But then Glasgow then managed to disrupt the Toulon line out, and they win the ball from there and managed to put it through the hands. And Canzonieri, who has now come back onto the field, he goes over to score. The conversions missed are at 36-12, but at this stage, it's only a consolation score, really. Nobody's, even the most diehard Glasgow fan is not thinking that there's any kind of comeback on. Glasgow then, they're looking for another score. They've got advantage, and they're within about 5 meters of the line. And Colby, twice in that passage of play, absolutely smashes Canzonieri. We then have a bit of pushing and shoving. After that, we eventually come back for the penalty. Glasgow, they go to the corner from the penalty, set up the maul. They break off that, then two-man pod come off that, and then they spread it again out to the left. Stain does really well to cut back inside against the grain and shows really good strength to get over to score under pressure from 2 or 3 Toulon defenders. This was converted about 35-19. It's Toulon, though, that have the final say. They've got a ruck inside the 22. They managed to create an overload on the right, and then they put Isaiah West through a hole, and he goes over to score. It's converted 43-19, and that is our final score. Toulon, absolutely deserved winners. Glasgow just did not show up for the game at all. We'll have a look now at some of the stats. So possession 53% to 47 in favour of Glasgow. Territory also 53-47. So Glasgow, most of the ball, most of the territory, could not do anything with it, especially in those periods where you felt they needed to score to stay in touch. By the time they started to get some scores on the board, it was the game was pretty much gone. Tries 3 for Glasgow, 6 for Toulon. Toulon, they got those 3 first half tries, and in the second half, it was 3 tries each. But they kept that that gap between them to the point where Glasgow never really felt like they had any momentum to come back into the game. Meters gained then 349 for Glasgow, 247 for Toulon. So Glasgow making ground, but just could not do anything with it in terms of finding that final pass or players having decent hands, enough to not drop balls when they were close to the line, that kind of thing. Turnovers 1 then, 15 for Glasgow and 10 for Toulon. So Glasgow doing well to turn over ball, but they just couldn't actually do anything with it. They just never really had that kind of sustained period where Toulon looked like they were under, actual pressure. They had kind of moments where they managed to get over to score, but it never felt like Toulon had their backs to the wall at any point during the game, even when Glasgow were trying to score at the end of the first half. Then line out 95% for Glasgow, 82 for Toulon. So looking at that, you think that Glasgow's line out went really well. But as I said, they had a few overthrows. They also had a few where they won the ball, but it was scrappy ball, maybe had to be slapped back on their own side, scramble to get the ball, or just not clean ball, and setting up the maul just didn't work for them either from there. And they just find it really hard to use that as a platform to attack. Toulon, did a really good job of putting pods up to try to disrupt them. and it really paid off for them. The scrum then 100% for Glasgow, 90% for Toulon, but Toulon were the ones that on their own feed, they were the ones who were forcing the penalties early on. Glasgow did get, I think, at least one penalty in the second half, but by that stage, Toulon's scrum dominance earlier on in the game was part of the reason why they were able to resist Glasgow trying to score in that period before half time. Meters kicked in, 266 for Glasgow, 628 for Toulon. Toulon just bossed that aspect of the game. Warriors, I thought like Miotti, who was in there for Tom Jordan, who was suspended because of the red card that he got against Munster, thought Miotti had a pretty average game, probably poor actually, if I'm honest. And it's not just on him though, because you would expect Cancellieri and Stain as well to, be helping him with the kicking game. Glasgow generally like to retain the ball, and kicking is not a huge thing for them, but it felt like in this kind of game that they needed to have some variety and to put some kicks in when putting the ball through the hand wasn't working for them, but they just tried to stick at it, and again, like moves would break down, to get turned over. And yeah, it just kind of felt like, finals rugby, you have to have a number of different ways to play. And because if your regular way of playing isn't working for you, you need that fallback to be able to, do stuff like just kick in behind them, turn them around, use the pace that you have in your team to get up there, put pressure on them, play in their, half in their 22, and just kind of like dog it out and get yourself back in the game. But Glasgow just couldn't do that. Clean breaks then is very telling. Just 2 for Glasgow and 4 for Toulon. Just shows that Toulon really did marshal that Glasgow attack really well. Like their defense just was on top really for the period of the game that really counted. In terms of the teams overall, for Glasgow, I would say poor defensive performance all throughout the game. It wasn't just in that first half. Towards the in the second half, when Toulon got their other 3 tries, there was some poor Glasgow defence there as well. Some tackles that maybe should have been made that weren't. And then by the time that they got their attack going, it was just far too late in the game. That as I said, there was no real chance of momentum swing or a comeback for them. And I think they're going to look back on this and think that they really haven't done themselves justice. Like they've been so good in the second half of the season, but when it's counted against both Munster and here against Toulon, just weren't able to do it. And I'm not sure really when they're going to be able to make their next appearance in the European final. It could be a long wait for them. Toulon, they started well. They took the chances in the first half. They weathered that Glasgow pressure before half time, kept them at arm's length then in the second half. And they really have put last year's disappointing defeat in the final behind them. And, the celebrations are theirs tonight.